Hi everyone. So the last one I'm going to cover tonight is introverted intuition. And when we talk about introverted intuition, what is often the question is what it isn't rather than necessarily what it is. Because so much seems to be attributed to this mystical, magical cognitive function, which I prefer to call information element. It has all sorts of different famous figures typed as INTJs and INFJs, from Friedrich Nietzsche all the way to Arnold Schwarzenegger. There is a tendency to ascribe very special qualities to these two types, Myers-Briggs, the INTJ, the INFJ, Socionics, the IAI, the ILI. But what I would say is that perhaps the reason why there's this sort of confusion around introverted intuition, I think it kind of stems from Jung himself, because I think when he came to describing this, it was pretty vague, just flashes of the unconscious and something deeply symbolic and deeply interpretive, to the point where it's quite difficult to establish where introverted intuition begins and where it ends. Now, the good thing about Socionics is that we use dichotomies for everything, not just the types, for the information elements, cognitive functions themselves. So that allows us to really build a clear picture of what this very ethereal and insubstantial in its nature cognitive function really is. So yeah, let me do that now. So I've already talked about perceptions, and within descriptive information, and within descriptive information, intuition, which is that perception which is internal and also detached. So we looked at that for extroverted intuition, this idea that intuition is in the mind's eye. It's not out there in the world. It's not something you can just see in front of you. And even for extroverted intuition, which is extroverted, it's still actually in the mind's eye. It's still internal. But yeah, so internal, but also detached. You can't feel intuition. Your introverted intuition is not going to be a feeling you have. It's going to be something you think about. It's going to be something detached from you and not experienced vivaciously. It's not something which can cause pain. It is not felt. It is simply thought about. So that's intuition. But now we come to introverted intuition, which first of all is introverted. So a bit like how introverted sensation is refining sensory objects, you could say, refining sensory experience. Introverted intuition is refining and narrowing down, filtering out, you could say, intuition, filtering the possibilities. It is narrowing down those possibilities towards those which are most important, those which are most meaningful, purposeful, you could say. And that's kind of the idea of introverted intuition. It's not open-minded. This is a misconception. People think that introverted intuitive types are going to get on so well with extroverted intuition types that somehow their intuitions are going to balance. They're not going to balance. They're going to confuse one another. They're going to be at cross purposes. Why is that? Well, because while the extroverted intuitive type is going to be wanting to be opening up possibilities, showing new ideas, new possibilities to explore, and wanting to explore them with someone else, introverted intuition is going to be saying, no, that's not important to me. That's not relevant to me in my life. Why should I give this any of my attention whatsoever? And that's the point, really. Introverted intuition is all about making a virtue out of closed-mindedness, not open-mindedness. Introverted intuition is about penetrating depth of insight, but it's not to do with breadth. It's not to do with curiosity. They can be curious about those things which are already shown to be on the path they want to follow, those things which are already of import, of relevance, of significance to them. But they don't go outside of that. They don't want to. It's just seen as a waste of their time. No, these are types which are very much about finding the narrow route, but that narrowness is meant to be something which leads towards something greater, something more profound, than what the day-to-day can offer us. And that also leads me to dynamic as opposed to static. So the idea for introverted intuition is that it's not lots of different distinct scenarios to explore. There's this one to explore, that one, that one, that one. It's not the sort of pick and mix of possibilities which extroverted intuition is about. Instead, it's having refined the possibility to that outcome which is most important. It is about seeing the flow and development of the past through the present all the way through to the future. And why the past? Well, in Myers, often sort of Jungian cognitive function people, some of the Myers-Briggs people suggest that introverted sensations about the past. No, the past is not connected to our direct sensory perception. It's back there. And unless you've experienced it directly, you have no sensory recollection. So often when we're thinking about the past, we're thinking about how things might have happened. No sensation is going to tell you about the Roman Empire. No, it's introverted intuition, which in the same way as it is trying to divine what is going on later, is also trying to divine what happened before and how that led to the modern day. It is about interpreting trends and developments over time. There's no bias towards behind us or ahead of us. So that's an important thing to keep in mind. A lot of introverted intuitive types can be historians. David Stark is a very clear example of an introverted intuitive historian. And there are almost certainly others. If you look at, for instance, Josephus as an example, as a Roman historian who I say is also introverted intuition leading. There are plenty of other examples. And philosophers who are introverted intuition tend to talk about the development of trends over time. Karl Marx talking about the progression of history towards his version of his Marxism, his version of socialism. Nietzsche talking about the giving away of man to the Übermensch, this sort of giving way to the future version of ourselves and where we came from and where we're leading out. Oswald Spengler, very, very clear example of introverted intuition. This idea that civilization is destined to break down, to fall apart, and it's all part of the lifespan of civilizations over many hundreds of years. So yes, all very much introverted intuition, very dynamic because it's about that flow, that time stream, rather than distinct separateness. Instead, everything is linking into everything else and moving forwards. So other things I should say about introverted intuition. It is the opposite of introverted sensation. It's not the opposite of extroverted sensation. They complement. Because if you're very much about introverted intuition, you're kind of looking for someone who's actually going to act on the strategy or the plan you've set out, the vision that you have. You need someone who actually has the gumption to go out and do it. And that is why figures like Arnold Schwarzenegger or Vladimir Lenin being INTJ, it's ridiculous. They're not. Men of action cannot be INTJs or INFJs. That's not what they are good at doing. Their strengths lie in strategy. They don't lie in tactics. They're not good at acting. They're not good at actually moving from thinking about to doing it. They kind of need an urgency to break them out of their mental spiral to actually do something. They crave the urgency from other people who are more action-oriented. They aren't tough. They can be disagreeable, they can be contrarian, but they're not tough. They're not able to actually make you do what they want to do. They're not good at it. They don't know how to act in the immediate moment to get what they need. That's where extroverted sensation is useful. So it's not that that's the opposite. Their strengths don't lie there. What is the opposite? That's introverted sensation. That is what cannot be in the same spot as introverted intuition. And why is that? Well, the more you are in introverted sensation, the more you are involving yourself, immersing yourself in the day-to-day flow of experiences. And the more you're doing that, the less you are detaching from the day-to-day towards the trends and directions and outcomes of greater significance. The whole point of introverted intuition is it acts against introverted sensation. It belittles introverted sensation. It calls it trivial, calls it unimportant, irrelevant, insignificant, right? introverted intuition has a disdain towards the mundane. Extroverted intuition doesn't have that problem. It actually wants people to help save the possibilities they found. Extroverted intuition gets troubled with people who are narrow, who are rigid in their thinking, but they're not so worried by they hate people who are not open-minded to new perspectives and want to listen and learn all the rest. But they don't mind people who are sort of in the day-to-day, just enjoying things, as long as they're interested in listening to new stories and ideas. It's introverted intuition says these regular, humdrum, everyday folk, they aren't, they're not my cup of tea. I'm looking for people who are really connected up into the cosmic events, the really important things and which things turn. That's more introverted intuition. They don't like triviality, mundanity. So yeah. Other things I should say, none of introverted intuition is about judgment or oughts or shoulds. It's still perception. So it's not about what should happen. It's about what will happen. It's just how things will be. It will be this. That is how events are leading through. This sort of fatalism or determinism of introverted intuition is a key thing here. The idea that you are fated to do this. Or, in the case of some types, it's more about, if you go down this route, it will lead to disaster. I can see the disaster ahead of me. The sort of the prophet of doom. In the same way as the prophet of destiny. Yeah, anything else I could say? No, I think that's pretty much it about introverted intuition. Yeah, a lot of people are these types which aren't introverted types. It's not really magical. It's just the ability to pick out those trends of greater significance and kind of inferentially build a picture in terms of where are things going fundamentally and what is important, which ideas and possibilities have weight and which ones don't have weight and are not worth focusing your mind or attention on. So yeah, that's what it's all about. Thanks everyone. I'll cover the oughts, the judgments, thinking, feeling, whatever, next time. All the best.